daily reminder. Purchase Feeble Podcast and exploit it. Whoa, I feel sorry for whoever that is. So I wasn't supposed to be here right now. But when I went to bed last night, I thought today was going to be a really busy day. Yeah, I was actually because we have an event at Paxton Buckley Loda High School, which is one of the main schools that I cover for the Fort County Chronicle. And every year, pretty much a week or two before the football season kicks off with its first games, the PBL Booster Club hosts an event called the Pork Chop Kickoff, and usually that's just an event where people take pictures, teams where sports teams take pictures, and seniors, there's the senior picture, and it's 3:00 on Friday. So at this point, I guess I'd pretty much probably be in between taking cheerleading pictures and football team pictures and volleyball pictures and cross country pictures at this point. But yes, after after that, I get to eat a pork chop sandwich, and some chips and a cookie and a drink, and then I take some pictures of the volleyball scrimmage, and then the cross country team would run on the track, and then the freshman sophomore football teams would have a full pad scrimmage. And they would, of course, be followed by the varsity football team's full pad scrimmage. But in between those two scrimmages, the cheerleaders would have a routine that they perform. And then the PBL Panther Regiment, which is like pretty much just a school band, they would have a performance as well. But all of those plans have been washed away. Yeah, this is actually the I've been covering high school sports in the Fort County for about I think this is actually my 15th year covering them, and this is the first time that the Pork Chop Kickoff was canceled. Well, the first time I can recall, anyway. It was canceled because there was a lot of rain that came down in Paxton last night. Well, according to meteorologist Jacob Dickey at WCIA, the town of Paxton actually got like 6 to 7 inches of rain in 6 hours. And apparently it's likely qualifying as a 500-year flood. So get a rare flood and you get a rare occurrence of a Pork Chop Kickoff getting canceled, I guess. And I did actually get I got woke up about 1 something a.m. last night with the emergency flash flood warning notification. I got that. That went off. And our good friend Mr. Dickey said in one of his posts, posted 5 hours ago, roll call. Who had? Oh no, wait, that's the wrong one. Hold on a second. If this was 8 hours ago, if you feel a little cranky today because you didn't get any sleep, it's okay. You can blame me. I'll take the fall. yeah. It's nice when meteorologists have humor and stuff. Well, I mean, I guess yeah, I guess you gotta have it, some of it, because man, it is a yeah, going through all those storms. I couldn't. Yeah. I often get some kind of anxiety when I hear meteorologists who are telling us to stay home and stay safe, and yet they're out on the road, telling us how bad what to tell us how bad the weather is. It's yeah. Guess that's why y'all get paid the big bucks and why I'm here. I guess. uh, well, I mean, I guess any silver lining. At least we didn't get pretty much underwater. Our downtown area didn't get underwater like Gibson City did back 5 years ago. Yeah, it's actually been well, not 5 years, almost to this day. Like it was August 12th, 2001, 2021 when Gibson City just got completely underwater. And have I told you? I believe I've talked on this podcast about how I was actually in Gibson City when that flood occurred. For those who haven't heard it, I guess I was doing a story on I was doing a story previewing GCMS's volleyball season, and after after taking a few photos of volleyball practice and talking to the coach, I was in that building, in the middle school building, for about a few hours, and then I guess somebody needed a ride home, and I volunteered to give him a ride home, and got turned around a few times because there was standing water everywhere, and then and then at some point I just said, okay, if anybody needs to ride back to Paxton, I'll help them out, and you know one of them took me up on my offer, and this lady had a son who worked at Monocle's, and I can remember him just walking to my car, his with water up to his waist, and yeah, yeah, but yeah, we managed to get out of it. I mean, there's quite a few points of standing water along Route 9, but we got home okay. No harm done, and and I got to see the Field of Dreams game. Yeah, that yeah. I've been I've been. Have you guys noticed I've been feeling quite pretty nostalgic lately? Um, uh, yeah. But I mean, not for 2021 necessarily, but for years past. Um, but yeah, in 2021, the White Sox, they played the Yankees in the, I guess, first ever Field of Dreams game, and that game turned out to be an instant classic. I just watched the YouTube uh, video with highlights of that game, and and of course Tim Anderson, he got the walk off home run to end it. And, and speaking of Tim Anderson, he's actually retiring after like 10 years in the majors. And say what you want about the way things ended. We'll always have that Field of Dreams game. Um, yeah, It's kind of strange. Just you know, just 2 days after the fifth anniversary of that Gibson City flood, we get a flood here in Paxton that uh, has that's produced a lot of standing water in many different streets in our town, and I think I took a picture a little while ago of a couple of people observing some standing water in the grass area next to the church that's next door to where I live. Um, yeah, then and of course, there was so much rain that came down that the that PBL had to cancel its pork chop kickoff. And yeah, this is actually my the first time I'm I think this is the first year in which I'm not covering a pork chop kickoff. Actually, uh, excluding 2020. I mean, I don't think they didn't have a pork chop kickoff in 2020. I don't think. No, no, they didn't. Um, yeah, yeah. Well, aside from 2020, this is the first time. It's the first time a year's gone by. I wasn't at a pork chop kickoff since 2012. Actually, my first year here. Well, I think I started full time uh, like maybe 3 days after the pork chop kickoff. Before then, actually for about a couple of weeks, I kind of worked part time as a sports journalist at the what was then the Paxton Record, and I also worked part time with my previous job as a part time clerk for the Herald and Review Indicator, and I think I did some freelance writing as well. Yeah, it's very busy. Yeah, very busy time. I'm doing two to three part time jobs, and I'm moving. Uh, no rest for the wicked at that time. That's for sure. Um, yeah. So and yeah. So yeah, the 2021 and 2026 seem quite similar. I've got got the White Sox in first place in the American League Central. And you have the Paxton Swedes and the Royal Giants playing against each other in a three-game championship series in the EI League. I mean, granted, the Giants actually ended up winning this time instead of the Paxton Swedes coming back from 13-6 deficit. Yeah, Game 3 of the 2021 championship series, Paxton trailed 13-6 after 8 innings, and then basically they ended up scoring like 12 runs in the ninth inning. Royal just completely ran out of pitching, um, and the but this last weekend they that series went to game three as well after in game two, it was a kind of a back and forth, and then the Swedes kind of rallied a little bit to tie the game, and then Charlie Hobbs hit a 2-run homer in the 10th inning, and the Swedes ended up winning that game to force a game three. But then the Giants ended up 10-run ruling the Swedes in the third game to take the title. Yeah. Yes, it was a thrilling. Game two was a thriller. It was a good series. It was a good series. Yeah, the White Sox. The White Sox are in first place, and I can genuinely see them staying in first place. Particularly if Luis Castillo has the same kind of outing, he can keep up. If he can keep up what he did in his last outing, I think it was like Wednesday when he made his debut, made his first start with the White Sox, and he shut out the Reds. So yeah, if he can keep that up, the White Sox definitely have a chance to stay in first place. I mean, who else is going to take them? I mean, nobody else in the AL Central is even. I don't think anybody in the AL Central is 500. Hold on, let me take a look. Yeah, in the AL Central, the White Sox have a 2.5 game lead over the Tigers, who are 60-61. And the Twins are 3.5 games back. Guardians are 4 games back. That's, I guess, guess one team could get hot. Yeah, I mean, even if the White Sox do end up winning the Central, do I think they have a chance to win the World Series? Yeah, we'd have to have a lot of lucky bounces in order for that to happen. And again, we've had some pretty lucky bounces this year already. I mean, maybe Pope Leo's doing his little magic, maybe. Well, that was fun living in the now for a little while. Let's take a look at some alternate timelines, shall we? Yeah, there were some missed opportunities that I in my 4-part series about how Nate Poole's catch in the 2003 game between the Minnesota Vikings and Arizona Cardinals led to Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce never meeting. Which you can find. I'm sure I've got a lot of links to show you, but yeah, I think at one point I talked about how this could have affected the Illini men's basketball team's run to the Final Four last spring. Spoiler alert: it doesn't really affect whether or not it doesn't really have any impact on them going to the Final Four, but it just impacts where they end up playing the game, because where they ended up playing in the Final Four, because the city of Indianapolis because in this alternate in that alternate timeline, Lucas Oil Stadium doesn't exist because the city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana, they decide, no, we're not going to give public funds to the Colts, and as a result, Jim Irsay ends up moving the team to Los Angeles, and and if he does that, then you gotta wonder, what would the city of Indianapolis have kept the RCA Dome intact, or the Hoosier Dome, whatever you want to call it? Would they have kept that building intact? Not so sure. I mean, the smart thing to do probably would have been to tear it down and just build some condominiums, some things to boost the economy. But if you did that, then the men's Final Four would not. Then the NCAA would have had to pick some other city to host the Final Four. And I don't know. Maybe St. Louis. I mean, after all, they still have the Rams in this timeline, so. About this timeline, I mean the alternate timeline I was talking about. And there was also, one thing I didn't mention from that timeline is whether Lovie Smith would have would have coached the Illini. They because in the alternate timeline, he's a 4-time Super Bowl champion. So if I mean, well, first of all, I guess he wouldn't have been fired in 2012. I think the Bears probably would have kept him around for a few more years, or either that, or Levy Smith would have decided, I don't really want to coach a rebuild. I think I'm gonna retire. And you got to think. Levy Smith. I think I've mentioned before. He was hired under some real turmoil with the at a time of real turmoil with the University of Illinois program. He was. I think he was hired like in March of that in the March of 2016, I believe. Yeah, he was hired a lot later than head coaches of major college football programs are usually hired. So he hadn't had a chance to recruit, didn't have and all that stuff. But but in the timeline, in the alternate timeline, he would have been a hot commodity. Any team from whether it's the NFL or college would have been chomping at the bit to try to get Lovey at that time. So that is if he was available. It could have been. I could have gotten a different job earlier and instead stuck around there. Who knows? And who knows if in that alternate timeline Bret Bielema ends up coaching the Illini. Maybe the Illini stick with whatever coach they ended up hiring. Who knows? Speaking of alternate timelines in which Bielema's career trajectory could have taken a serious turn. Yeah, I came up with another one. And for those of you who are wondering where that alternate timeline for the Steve Bartman incident came from, I've recently saw that there have been 0 votes about whether or not I should do it. So I think I'm going to take that as, nah, we're not interested in hearing what you think about that timeline. So whatever. There was another timeline I thought about recently. You guys remember that wild card game in the 2002 season between the Giants and the 49ers, the one where the Giants had this big lead, had a 24-point lead, and then before the 49ers scored 25 unanswered points, and then the Giants drove down the field in the final for a last-second field goal, for a potentially last-second field goal, only for the long snapper to mess up, and only for the holder to end up rolling to his right, throwing a pass that should have been. That felt incomplete, though the 49ers should have been called for pass interference, but they weren't, so they didn't get enough time down like they should have. Yeah, that whole game kind of reminded me of that one part in the one scene in The Simpsons where Homer faked his own death to get used a dummy to fake his own death to get out of work, and both Lenny and Carl are kind of calling, saying what happened, and that was pretty much how I felt, how the Giants looked, and Lenny could have been like, "Oh God, Giants are up by 24 points," and then Carl would be like, "Oh no, the 49ers scored 25 unanswered points." And Lenny'd be like, "Oh God, the Giants are in field goal range in the final with less than 10 seconds left. Oh no! Oh no! The long snapper messed up, and now the holder is rolling around to his right, and he's throwing an incomplete pass. Oh God! The 49ers interfered with the eligible receiver, and now they're gonna get another time down. Now, granted that they had an ineligible receiver downfield, but yeah, offset even if there are offsetting penalties, the Giants still get the untimed down. Oh no, the referees didn't call pass interference. Now the game's over. Yeah. So yeah, I thought about this alternate timeline, and I don't know if I'm necessarily planning on doing what I did with the previous alternate timeline and just recapping every single year that happened since then, but I have gotten a little bit deep into this one because there's some serious repercussions as a result of the messed up snap by Trey Junkin. I mean, poor guy. He had to. He had a. Well, I guess he had a reputation among people who really knew football, or at least really big Arizona Cardinals fans, who as he had a reputation as being really, really good at his job. Well, yeah, nobody would have known his name, but nobody would have known his name if not for this screw up. And, I received a bit of flack from one of the fans a while ago, saying that I didn't talk enough about their long snap. I guess this fan was the mother of the long snapper for the football team, and he said I didn't talk about enough about how he never missed a snap, never botched a snap over the season and stuff. Well, I mean, I just would just say that don't take it personally. It's long snappers. They have a very thankless job. They're one of those really thankless jobs where if people don't know your name, then you've done a really good job. Just like referees, just like kickers, or they don't. Or if you do a really good job, then nobody's gonna know your name. But you don't want people knowing your name, because the only time people know your name is when you screw up. But anyway, I'm imagining there's definitely at least a couple of alternate timelines as a result of that botch snap, and had Trey Junkin snap that thing perfectly, there's two different things that could have happened. Either the kicker Matt Bryant could have made the field goal or could have missed. If he missed, there weren't. It wouldn't shift the timeline too dramatically. I mean, he probably wouldn't have had a job the next season. He wouldn't have been would have been a Pro Bowler and the NFL scoring leader in 2016. But if Matt Bryant had made that field goal, then whoo doggy. There are some. This would alter quite a bit. Before I get into it, I gotta give a shout out to Secret Base, to the YouTube channel Secret Base. They've done a lot of very good content over there, and the one that's kind of relevant to what I'm talking about right now is is a 7-part series that they did on the history of the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, speaking of which, Matt Bryant would in fact become the Pro Bowler and the All NFL scoring leader in 2016 as a member of that Falcons team. Yeah, and yes, that is the team that blew the 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. Yes. Anyway, um, they're doing the Secret Base did a 7-part series on the history of the Atlanta Falcons. In part 5, they talk. I think it was part 5 when they talked about the about the Michael Vick years from 2001 to 2007. And there are two things that are kind of relevant to the timeline I'm talking about. They hired a head coach for ahead of the 2004 season named Jim Mora. Not the playoffs, Jim Mora. Not him, but his son actually. And he was before Jim Mora Jr. became the Falcons head coach. He was actually the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. And before before getting fired, before he got hired in 2004, and before he went on the radio in 2006 and talked about how much he loved the Atlanta how much he loved the Washington, would have loved to become the head coach of the Washington Huskies, and would have jumped ship to them if there was a position available. And, it's a whole thing. Before that, he was hired. He was the defensive coordinator, and he got the job because and he got the job by showing him a whole bunch of books of ideas they had, and I guess they were so. And he was so. I guess the Falcons were so impressed with it that they hired him, and they canceled an interview. They canceled an interview they had scheduled with drumroll, Nick Saban. Yep. The Falcons had a chance to hire Nick Saban in 2004. So, yeah. But if Matt Bryant had made the field goal, if Trey Duncan didn't mess up that snap in the 2002 Wild Card game, and Matt Bryant ended up making the field goal, and the Giants ended up winning, Jim Mora would have gotten, in our timeline, Steve Mariucci, who was the head coach of the 49ers at the time, he got fired after they lost in the following week in the divisional round to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But in this timeline, I'm referring to the one in which the Giants ended up beating the 49ers in the wild card. Yeah, Steve Mariucci still would have been fired, but Jim Mora Jr. would have, Jim L. Mora, he probably preferred you call him Jim L. Mora rather than Jim Mora Jr. But anyway, he would have been fired. He would have been fired as well. His team gave up 41 points in the wild card. That's to the Giants, no less. A Kerry Collins led Giants team, no less. So no, he's not keeping his job. He's not keeping his job, and I don't think anybody's going to be clamoring to hire a guy who just gave up 41 points to the Giants in a loss. That's not happening. In our timeline, he actually stayed one more year. Jim Mora actually ended up staying one more year as a defensive coordinator for the 49ers before taking that head coaching job in Atlanta. But yeah, they're not hiring Jim Mora if he ends up blowing that game to the Giants. No. But blessing in disguise. the 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 Washington Huskies are hiring, are looking for a new head coach in 2003, and I would say Jim Mora would have a chance to get that head coaching position. You know, after all, after all, Washington in our timeline ended up hiring Keith Gilbertson like just weeks before the start of the season. So yeah, Jim Mora. So in this timeline, Jim Mora is the head coach at Washington. Congratulations, Jim Mora. You got the job you wanted. You got the job you so wanted. Anyway, as a result of Jim Mora not being available, the Atlanta Falcons would have hired Nick Saban ahead of the 2004 season. And on another note, Sean Payton was actually the Giants' offensive coordinator. So, and I should probably say, and his Giants, after winning the wild card game, I think they would have actually had a good shot of beating the Buccaneers. As you well know, in our timeline, the Bucs ended up winning the Super Bowl that year, but I think they don't match up that well against the Giants. No, they. Strahan would have given Brad Johnson a heck of a lot of fits, and the running game and Tiki Barber, he knows his brother Rondé very very well, doesn't he? And if the Buccaneers, if that Buccaneers defense had a weakness in 2002, it was a good run game. If you ran, because they talk about how the Super Bowl in that Super Bowl in our timeline, Bill Callahan, I guess if you were to believe the word of Tim Brown, Jerry Rice, and all those guys, he would have. Yeah, Bill Callahan, had an original game plan drawn up which would have emphasized the running game led by Charlie Garner and I believe Tyrone Wheatley was on that team as well. Let me check. Yeah, by the way, Tyrone Wheatley, I don't know if you've mentioned this before, but he's actually the running backs coach at the U of I. So that's something. But anyway, yeah. Tyrone Wheatley was a member of the Oakland Raiders. Granted, he only got 419 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns that season, but yeah, he was on the team, and Charlie Garner, he had almost 1,000 yards on a team that wasn't really emphasizing the run all that much, but he got like what? How many yards per game? 60 yards per game. That's not too bad. Not too bad. What was his yards per carry? I'm looking at Pro Football Reference right now, and let's see, yards per carry. Okay, well, he had 962 yards and 182 carries. That, I don't know, I think it's at least 4 yards. 4 yards per attempt. 5.3 yards per attempt. Not too bad. The Tim Brown and Jerry Rice of all people, they were saying, if they stuck to a run-heavy offense, they would have won the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers. But Bill Callahan ended up changing the game plan like the Friday before the Super Bowl. Like, everybody was just kind of freaked out about that, apparently. But the Giants, they, like I said, they had Tiki Barber and they had Ron Dane, who was not bad. But I think that would have been good enough to beat the Buccaneers that year in the divisional round. That would have been quite the upset. Yeah, and I think they would have beaten the Eagles in the NFC title game as well. It would have been the Super Bowl would have been between the Giants and the Raiders. Do I think the Giants would have won that Super Bowl? No, come on. come on, it's Kerry Collins versus Rich Gannon, which yeah, it doesn't sound that great. It's getting great in hindsight, but he had I think he was the MVP. He was the NFL MVP that year. Rich Gannon was, and and like I said, he had Tim Brown, he had Jerry Rice, and I believe he had Jerry Porter as well. So that would have. I mean, and granted, they gave up what 39 points to the 49ers. Yeah, that would have been. Yeah, that defense would not have. Yeah, I mean, Michael Strahan can rush the passer all he wants, but that defense didn't have a chance against that Raiders offense. No. Yeah, so the Raiders would have won. Yeah, the Raiders would have won the Super Bowl, and John Gruden's Buccaneers would not. And I don't know. I don't think Gruden would have ever won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. And meanwhile, the Raiders have won Super Bowl. So, that's that's a big change right there. I mean, I'm not gonna go into what happens with the Super Bowls of later years, not at least not in this episode of the podcast. But yeah, there's a big change right there, and but Sean Payton, he as the offensive coordinator for the Giants, that would have been being able to go to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years. That would have been great for him as far as trying to get some prospects of being head coach. He could have been hired by the Detroit Lions. He could have been hired by the 49ers themselves. He could have been hired by the Jaguars, the Cowboys. They end up hiring Bill Parcells. Maybe they take his understudy. Maybe, I don't know. Or he could have been hired by the Bengals, and and the Bengals could have prevented the Marvin Lewis era. I mean, yeah, it's an era where they went to the playoffs a lot, but it's also where they also lost. They also never won a playoff game under Marvin Lewis in our timeline. So that would have been interesting. But even more interesting is what Nick Saban could have done with the Michael Vick led team. I'm not gonna try to predict whether they win any Super Bowls or not, but here's a twist. Michael Vick still would have gone to prison for dogfighting in this timeline, but he would have because Nick Saban's still with the Falcons, does he try to get hired at Alabama? No. Well, I was saying this timeline, no. He's pretty much stuck in Atlanta because Alabama already hired Bobby Petrino. Ah. Yeah. But just like Petrino, I think Nick Saban probably would have had a little too much class to just leave him high and dry like Petrino did in our timeline. He probably would have at least coached through the 2007 season before taking the Arkansas job. And right there is where Bret Bielema's coaching career trajectory changes. Because if Arkansas has Nick Saban, Bret Bielema, he's gonna have only 2 choices. After the 2012 season, he could either stay at Wisconsin, or he could have gone to Auburn, Texas Tech, Tennessee, Kentucky, Oregon. But he would not have gone to Arkansas in this timeline. So who knows? Maybe he stays in Wisconsin. Maybe he becomes kind of one of those legacy lifetime coaches there at Wisconsin, or maybe he takes a job at Auburn or Texas Tech or Tennessee, and maybe he has a little more success there than he did at Arkansas, and he sticks around to live for a little while longer there. And I mean, maybe not, maybe he has kind of the same success that he had, or lack thereof, and he still becomes kind of an assistant in the NFL before taking on the Illinois job. Who knows? Yeah, I mean that's really all I got so far on that timeline. I mean, do you want me to do that timeline? Maybe I'll. Could be an interesting look. I mean, but I'm about 45 minutes deep, and I can't waste. Yeah, Libsyn only gives me so much storage space for in a month, so I should probably end the podcast here. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Actually, hold up. Before I go, yeah, actually, this like I mentioned, the Giants in this timeline have gone to 2 Super Bowls in 3 seasons. So what does that mean for? What does that mean for Kerry Collins? Maybe they stick with him. Maybe they stick around with him a little longer. Maybe as a result, they don't draft Eli Manning in 2004. There's another. Just like the 4-part timeline I did previously. This little butterfly effect that we have of the Giants' wild card game in 2002. It could lead to some changes that affect the 2004 NFL draft. Yeah. Okay. Now I will leave on this note. I'm going to leave on this note now. Thank you, and like I say, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys next time.